Okay, we're back with Ken and Mike. My uncle's escaped Alcatraz special. We just realized this today. I don't know why we didn't just realize this because it's been a couple weeks. But we've been doing this podcast for a year now. And this is podcast number 52, as Ken said earlier, 52 weeks in a year. So I can't believe we've been doing this for a year.
Wow, we didn't expect 52 episodes.
Yeah, we didn't.
Amazing.
You guys sunk in like ticks.
Yeah. Yeah, I told my wife today on the way to the beach to meet our grandkids. I was telling her it was a year, and it's like, I thought we were just going to do, a couple of.
I know.
And just kept
you
going.
You couldn't get rid of us.
I think it's the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, anyway, congratulations to both of you. Congratulations for your book and the fact that, we have so much to friggin' talk about for a year. So that's pretty amazing. And hopefully, this year we'll be doing some other stuff to kind of solve this crazy mystery. I mean, just beforehand, before we jumped on here, one thing we want to kind of acknowledge is Ken's aunt. She passed away. Was it last week, Ken?
She passed away. Oh my gosh. I believe it was Monday morning.
Yeah.
So sorry.
So sorry for that. It's like, we were hoping that we were going to be able to talk to her and interview her, but, and, she was poor health, and she had a fall, I guess, that you said, and then she didn't really recover from that. And so God bless her. And sorry that we couldn't find the answers for her before she passed on. But we, hopefully we can do that for your mom. Your mom looks like in great shape, though. And
now, out of the 14 kids, she's the last living England.
Wow.
Of John and Clarence.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it would be awesome to really kind of, solve the mystery once and for all. Have DNA or either find
proof. Yeah.
Just be able to have really, really, definite closure. So.
Yeah. How about you, Mike? What's it been like for you for the year?
Well, like you said, a little bit over a year ago, we reached out to you with our book and hoping to do an episode of an interview and, kind of hit the high points. And we didn't even get to that point because, we emailed you and, we said, here's the book, here's the story, can we get on your podcast? And that never happened because you came back to us and, we're asking more questions and we're more interested in like a stronger interest than what I was expecting. Because I'd seen, obviously, you had done other podcasts with other true crime stories. That's what got our attention. And it was, you were already talking, we can build a show around this from the get-go. And which I was pleasantly surprised about, because I don't know how it is on your end, all that's involved. We just get this side of things where we just jump on the air and, do the show. And then, we talk for about an hour, and then a day or two later, it pops up on the internet and it's there and on all the different streaming services that you are connected to. And, the magic happens, but Ken and I are not a part of that. We share our stories, but you're doing all the technical stuff. So you have all your things on your end. So I know what's, at least theoretically, what's involved in all the commitment that it has to be to do a show like this. It's not a small thing.
Yeah. But like, we recognize that the one thing we're true crime people, but we're also storytellers, and we saw a great story here.
Such a great book. And we were so excited.
Yeah. I mean, when we were reading the book, it was like a page turner, and like, I was reading in bed, and I was like,
"It's a movie, people."
Exactly. It is a movie.
Putting it out there again.
Yeah, and not the one that was done 40 years ago.
I did a lot of script development when I first started in this business, and a lot of big movies passed through my desk. And I do know that this book is a movie. I've optioned many books, and they turned into movies, and I know in my gut we will make this movie.
Yeah. It's just too. Excuse me.
I believe that too. I mean, it really turned out way better than what I thought when we first started down the road, and I couldn't be more happy with it than how it turned out.
Yeah. How about you, Ken? What were your?
Oh, Mike, that was Ken.
No, I'm talking to Ken.
I thought you were talking to Mike.
No, we just asked Mike what his impressions
sorry.
were. So, Ken, what was your impressions over the past year, and how this has kind of developed for you?
Right. I really enjoyed once we started down this podcast lane. I really was looking forward, and I was glad that we did it. We were able to explore each of the chapters in the book. Sometimes even the chapters in the book, we had to peel back and cut back some things. So it really gave me the opportunity to voice and tell stories that some stories are not even in the book. That we had to cut out. I loved having all of the special guests, the FBI steward, the different U.S. Marshals, even Art. I love having Art on.
We love Art.
We love Art. He's the best. He's so entertaining.
It was good to listen to other people and their voices and their stories. So to me, I've been surprised. The one company that is interested in doing a movie out of this, my understanding is he caught wind of the podcast.
Yeah.
And he was watching the podcast, and then he went and got the book, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, well, we've got to get access to this book," And so if people go back and start at the very beginning, I know there's 52 hours now worth of video to watch, but people that I have talked to and have gone back and watched it said, I binge watched it.
It's what we like to call in the industry sticky.
It's sticky.
It's very sticky. It's like, it's hard. Like, you put it on there, you start watching, you start listening to the stories. And
well, it's so interesting because there's so many stories that are connected to this case, and there's so many different avenues that this could have gone. And I think that your compelling argument for their survival is what drives me all the time to dig, get to the bottom of it. Where are they? I just think it's just such compelling work that you guys did. Your investigative skills and your ability to get all of that information into a book like that. I was very impressed with it. And I think that because it's such a great story, it's one of the biggest true crime mysteries of all time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how anybody would not, really kind of understand the magnitude of what this story is. And because it has all the dramatic elements. I mean, you have it's an escape from a prison island.
It writes itself.
It's right. It's like the only other movie that's like that is Papillon.
Yes.
Which
one of my favorite movies.
And if you look in the credits in Papillon,
which means butterfly in French,
which means butterfly. And this is really weird because I have the poster up in my office.
It's so weird.
The producer who produced that has the same name as me.
Robert Dorfman.
Oh.
In France, Robert Dorfman. There's another Robert Dorfman.
He spells his name the same way I do, with two N's at the end. He's more than likely a relative.
It's so funny
because there's not that many. So it was pretty funny. I remember seeing it as a kid. Because everyone used to spell my name wrong as a kid. They always used to leave the other N off. And whether it was teachers, whether it was anything like that, and I saw it in like big bold print on the screen when I was watching it with my dad, whose name is Robert Dorfman, and my grandfather's, whose name is Robert Dorfman. So it was just like, we all looked at it, we were like, whoa.
It's so funny.
So the fact that, the only other movie like that is a prison island was Papillon.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. I don't know what
all right. So what are we talking about this week?
We're talking about
I wanted to kind of touch on, since it seems to be like, and it has been from the very beginning, is the topic around the 70-ish, because we really don't know when the photograph was taken. It was somewhere in between 1970 and 75. I tend to believe it was more toward the middle. And the reason I say that is because Brizzi got caught, wrecked his plane, got caught in 76.
Where did he get caught?
He goes to prison
in Florida.
in Florida. So if it had been done in 75, I mean, it happened like right after he got back. So I don't know. For some reason, I asked his wife. She couldn't remember the exact date that he went down. She did remember him going to Brazil, and she did remember him being down there for almost 3 months. I mean, it wasn't like this quick trip where he went down and came back, 5 days later. I mean, he was down there for quite a while. So, but I've had people question the photograph for years. It started off with the U.S. Marshal Dykes. He tried to discredit it. I told you how he tried to measure the arm length.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That was dumb. I'm sorry. No offense to him, but that makes no sense.
I mean,
depth of field. Come on. Anyone who knows anything about photographs, it's like you can't. Oh, you're going to measure behind us? Oh, let me stand back here.
Yeah, look how big my hand looks right now.
It's ridiculous.
So I guess my hand is the same size as my head.
It's just ridiculous.
But so I will say this. I've heard people argue this fact too, because when Brizzi gave the photograph to the family, he never said that was John and Clarence. And in fact, he referenced those two men by the name of Moses and Jerry. Moses being the dark-headed guy
on the left,
and Jerry being the blonde-headed guy. And I've come back to people who have argued that fact and said, well, all of the roses that my grandmother got during her lifetime, after the escape up to her death, every single one of them, my mom will tell you this, every single one that came in, the card was signed Joe and Jerry. Not Moses and Jerry, but Joe and Jerry. And so I asked my mom one time, did John ever go by the name Jerry? And she was like, well, I'm not real sure. Until I was reading the contents of the pouch that was found in the bay. It has all the photographs.
Yeah.
One time there was a photograph. It said a woman, they described it as a woman standing in front of a car. And on the back, someone had written, from the family, this is Alfred. So I was like, okay, well, undoubtedly they must have dressed as women before. But there was a photograph that was sent to John. And on the back of it, it was written, to my beloved Jerry. There you go. Now, someone was referencing him as Jerry on that photograph. So, we do know that they went by multiple different names.
Sure.
When they got arrested, Alfred was going by Robert Anglin. Clarence was going by Carl Miller, one of his cousins. They never listed what John was going by, but they all use alias names. So, could it have been that, they used those names, Fred used those names just so that the family should have known who they were talking about? I mean, he wasn't going to come out and say, oh, John and Clarence. So anyway, to me, I don't understand how people can't take a professional person. I mean, not me or Mike or you and Cindy, and we're the ones saying that these are professional people that, you're talking law enforcement. I know I told you once, I never saw the clip one time, but in the 2015 History Channel show, they actually had another person besides Michael Street look at those photos. It was a retired FBI, it was a lady. And I saw the clip where she compared Clarence, and she had a dead-on match with Clarence. Now, they never included that in the show for some reason, but there's been multiple people that have looked at that photograph.
Yeah.
Case in point, the last group of people, which was Ident TV, 99.7. I don't know what else you could.
I know.
You could go to someone and say, what is it that we could do to prove to you that this is them? I mean, what is it other than what we've already done?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and what we're trying to do. I mean, listen, let's just put it this way. we're doing a lot more than most anybody has done. I mean, you guys have done so much with your book and your research, and and then when we came on, for us, we're all about trying to find the answers to things. That's why we love true crime, is because we want to find out who did it, and but this is like, where are they? So it's another mystery in that. So I think but with every mystery like this, you're going to have people who have different opinions and different agendas. I mean, you can look at it, just in our comment section on YouTube. I mean, majority of the people believe the work you've done, but we have a couple people who come on and then just kind of naysayer. I mean, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do a little experiment here, because Mike, you're really good at playing the other side here. Try to deconstruct our argument, and what would you say? What are the weak points in both your book to prove that they not only made it and survived in South America? Like, if you were on the literally a very critical eye, what would you say?
Well, when Ken and I were working on the book, we were working on it about the time that we did the Expedition Unknown episode in 2022. We had written most of it. And when we were going to go down there, of course, our hope and expectation was that we would either find them or have really compelling evidence that we're closing the case. This is the final nail in the coffin to prove it. And we did get some evidence when we went up to the mountain above Montero Lobato, and we found primarily the penny. The penny was the most important item. The lighter is interesting, but it could be anybody's lighter.
Exactly.
But a penny up there, and we've talked about this several times, that penny should not be there, an American penny. And so it wasn't the evidence that I was really hoping for. It was good. It was interesting. And so Ken and I, we talked about, what are we going to do with the book? Do we try to publish it now with the information we have that, in my mind, was a soft ending versus a hard ending, where it's like, we got the DNA, we got the family, we found John, something that is absolutely definitive and no more questions. That was what I was hoping for, and I thought that hurt the story. But we were also, at the time, this is before we met you, we didn't have anywhere to go after Expedition Unknown as far as investigating, unless Ken and I flew down to Brazil, but it would just be him and me. We don't speak the language. We don't know the culture very well. Where would we search? Who would we get to help us? And it would cost a lot of money, of course, to do that. How long would we be there? Weeks, months? We didn't know. And so we were kind of at a crossroads. And so we decided, well, we're just going to roll the dice, finish the book to the best of our ability, and hopefully a publisher will like it enough to publish it. And evidently, or not evidently, that's exactly what happened. And so for me, the weakest part of the story is, as we've talked about a number of times, is that our case is circumstantial. That we have a lot of strong evidence, and we have, we're able to trace the family from when they were young boys all the way to Brazil. And we were able to find people and documentation, photographs, accounts, transcripts, recordings that document their lives, which I find is remarkable. We even have a strong trail of when they were in Alcatraz, when they were doing all these secret things. Well, fortunately for us, Alan West didn't make it out. That was the best thing that could have happened for us, because he gave a firsthand account of what happened. I don't think it's 100% accurate. I think he's embellishing things, and he's given himself a lot of credit for what the other three did, but he's telling what happened on the inside. We never would have had that information had Alan West made it with them and disappeared that the other three did. But we have that information that helps us, because we know what they did when they did these things, and we have the other evidence to corroborate these things. So for me, I want the DNA. I want the fingerprints. I want the relatives that can absolutely corroborate it. That to me is the thing, the one piece that we're lacking, in my opinion.
Yeah, but and you think about that, though, it's like it's a tall order. It's a really tall order. It's just like, I just think about if I had to do this just to prove some sort of lineage in my family or something like that, we're all, all our relatives as well as yours, Ken, like your aunt just passed on. I mean, the only living Anglin left is, from that family is your mom out of 14 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's a really, to me, it's like, it reminds me, because, we've done treasure hunting stuff, treasure hunting shows and stuff. It's a treasure hunt. This is a treasure hunt, and you guys have basically are retracing the steps, and your book has become like your treasure map,
mm-hmm.
And everything you're documenting and all that kind of stuff. And you're finding all those, because like, it was funny night the other day, I was just watching that movie National Treasure, with Nicolas Cage. And it has that same feel where you're constantly feeling, you're finding all this information. You're trying to piece this puzzle together of dates and times and people and artifacts, and leading you to what we all believe is the conclusion, is that they did make it to Brazil and they lived out their lives. And, whether or not they did have kids or not, we don't know. We believe that there's, that we only know that from Fred Brizzi.
Right.
But.
And he said they definitely both had kids.
Well, Fred Brizzi's story is kind of interesting in the fact that, like Art said in a clip that I posted, he believed that Fred was involved, but Fred would kind of tell the story in a way so it wouldn't get him in trouble.
Right.
Because he didn't want people to know how involved he really was.
Sure.
But he knew things when he was telling the story in 92, when Uncle Man brought him, to the family. And that's another point there. Of all the people who believed Fred Brizzi, Uncle Man believed him. Because he never would have brought that man to meet the family if he did not believe him. And I have pretty strong evidence that Uncle Man was meeting him in 1986 also. So it wasn't like all of a sudden he met this guy, or
right.
Fred Brizzi came down to the family and said, "Hey, I want to tell you the story," But Fred knew things that at that time, the information was only in the FBI files.
Mm-hmm.
And no one had access to them at that time.
Yeah.
So to know that John was that they used the prison boat to escape, and that they were going to use the same method that they did whenever they were kids. Well, the only document that ever stated that John had said he was thinking about using the prison boat was written in the FBI files, which no one had. So for him to know that is, to me, that gave a lot of credit to his story. But then, like Mike said, which I agree too, I went back and read Brizzi's story. If you're telling a story and it's not really true, you pretty much kind of summarize the story. You don't go into great detail.
Exactly.
Like I said about the plane, he could have said, "Oh, when they were flying their plane, they landed just north of Mexico City." But no, they landed, they were refueling, they heard it on the radio at 10 a.m. And then he corrects himself and says, "Well, really, it was 11 o'clock back home when they heard the story, when they heard it blasting over the news about the escape." So this isn't something that he's making up. It doesn't sound like to me.
He's recalling.
Mm-hmm.
He's recalling what happened.
Yeah.
And he was the only one of all the people, even Art believed it at one time. He had a plane. He knew how to fly. He was friends with them. And then you start asking this question. Okay, well, so let's say it was him. Let's say we have definite proof it was Fred Brizzi, and he's flying into Mexico. Where is he flying to? You just don't fly into another country, right? I mean, you have a destination you're going to. So he's going to somewhere. And that somewhere, we later find out, which makes sense, is Mickey Cohen has a farm in Mexico. Mm-hmm. So clearly he was going somewhere. You wouldn't have just landed. And think about this. Can you imagine you're flying a plane and all of a sudden you're in Mexico and you go, oh, I need to get gas.
Right.
Where are you going to get gas at?
Exactly.
Oh, there's an airport down there. So
Yeah.
I'm going to land there and get gas.
Not just gas, but like gas. Petrol for for an airplane. You just can't use regular. It's a different type. So
it's just it's crazy to think about that. It couldn't have just been off the cuff. We're gonna fly you into Mexico. All this had to be planned out.
Yeah. Well, you even go back. You go back to the fact that. I'm sorry.
He had to know where he was going, and he had to know that he'd been there before.
Absolutely.
The first time he had been to wherever he was going, taking him to.
Yeah, and then the fact, if you go back even to Fred Brizzi's origin story, the fact that, he was friends with your uncles. He's known them since they were kids. They were, young teens, and that, the whole thing that he did become a pilot at a young age, and he did go off, and it's just, and the fact that, and we know he's a pilot because there's a newspaper article about him crashing his plane into the airfield in Florida near where your uncles lived.
Yep.
He
fly all the time from Ruskin down to Colombia, pick up drugs and then fly them back.
Yeah.
And he didn't have just one plane. He had multiple planes that people were working. This was a large group of people that were doing it. It wasn't just him.
No, yeah.
And so, he tells the family when he got caught, he had $1 million in cash on him. And they took every bit of that. They took his planes, they took his cars, they took everything.
And that's like in the mid 70s.
Where did he get $1 million of cash?
$1 million then was probably like $100 million today.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he wasn't, and that's what I think sometimes people think of Fred Brizzi. They think of him as like one of these people who would, back when I was growing up in the 80s, someone would go down into Mexico and get you'll probably date me, a nickel bag or a dime bag, or maybe a pound,
Yeah.
He's going down into these countries and he's bringing back, when he got caught, he had 600 pounds of marijuana.
Wow.
Along with Quaaludes and other drugs. So you don't just fly into another country and go up to somebody and say, hey, I want to buy some drugs.
Yeah, no, there's an organization.
Absolutely. He's working for someone. It's like that movie Tom Cruise did where he was flying in and out of Central America, and it was like the CIA was involved, and they knew it was drug running the whole time. That was a true story. That was around the same time.
Yeah, I mean,
that was going on all the time.
So, and for him to go into Brazil, into Monteiro Lobato, which Mike, can tell you, it was, when we were there in 22, it was like a really small town. So I can imagine what it was like 60 years in the past.
Yeah.
And for, an American guy, Fred Brizzi, to be at that town, what was he doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. It's an insane story. It's insane that with all the work that you guys have done on this book,
they still refuse to acknowledge. Yeah. But also, where's the bodies? Okay, let's say they did drown.
Right.
Let's just say they did. Where'd they go? I mean, they're sharks, but you swam in that bay. It's not like the sharks are coming all over the place.
Well, there's this one piece in the FBI report where they explored the idea that, assuming they drowned and the raft disintegrated and they were pulled down, because there are stories. It was Charlie Hopkins, somebody we had on the show. Ken recorded him, and he talked about how he watched two of his friends die in the bay, that they were swimming past the prison trying to escape, and they both got pulled down in an undercurrent, and their bodies were never recovered. And so the FBI were assuming the same thing happened to John, Clarence, and Frank, that they got pulled down to the bottom of the bay, and that in the FBI report, they talked with, I guess, medical experts of how long it would take the bodies to resurface again, for the gases to form in the body when they decay. And I think it was about several weeks later, like a month or something. And so they positioned boats out on the bay looking for the bodies to resurface. And of course they never did. So
Right.
after a short time, they gave up on that. They said, well, clearly the bodies aren't here because there's nothing holding them down. They just would have sank to the bottom and then resurfaced.
Floated. They would have just floated back up.
The problem with that theory is that they found the intact boat still inflated.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that means they would have had to fall out or jump out of the boat.
I mean, that makes no sense. The boat would have been, mangled or something. It wouldn't have been in good condition.
Yeah.
Well, and what happened to the other life vest? They found one that had a hole in it, looked like it had been cut. They patch it, blow it up, and it holds air and put weights on it, and it stayed inflated. And they even made a comment in the FBI files that it could have stayed in inflated. All you had to do was add air to it by the little tube. So it wasn't like it failed,
No.
It's so. But then what happened to all the clothes that they had?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other life vest that John and Clarence,
Mm-hmm.
one of the other two, if that happened to be Frank Morris. I don't know why they always said Frank Morris, but they never found any of those things. But then you go back and you look at their cells, they didn't even take their own clothes.
Right.
All of their clothes were left there in the cell. So they had alternate clothes that they were using, which matches up to what, James Whitey Bulger said. He told them how to make wetsuits. So, oh my gosh, it's, all this technology or all these items that they were using, I just don't understand why people have a hard time believing that they made it out of the water.
Yeah. Well, because, there was a counter narrative, I mean, your narrative came like 60 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, I didn't know anything about this side, your family side, until we met. Had no clue.
We had no clue.
No
I had no clue.
All they know is either the Clint Eastwood movie,
Right.
Exactly.
Which that in itself is so kind of hilarious, because I talked when we were out for the 2012 anniversary. Believe it or not, Richard Tuggle was in the audience,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a chance to talk to him. And we asked him, well, what inspired you to write this screenplay? And believe it or not, he said he was a struggling writer who couldn't get anything published. He decided to take a trip out to Alcatraz. They had opened it up for tourists. He was walking around the prison, and he went through the bookstore, and he saw a book someone had written on Alcatraz. He purchased it. He came home, he read it, and he goes, man, this will make a great movie.
Yeah.
And so, he didn't have the luxury of having the FBI files either.
Yeah.
He didn't know the testimony that West gave, and he didn't know any of the interviews that they had done with other prisoners about John and Clarence. He just basically goes, okay, I need a main character, and I'm going to make it Frank Morris because he's the loner,
Yeah.
And when he does eventually sell it or get it sold to Paramount, they came back and tweaked it a bit, but they made it to where Frank Morris was the.
Yeah, because they were centering around Clint Eastwood. That was the whole point.
But they didn't have multiple actors; they had one.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how most people. If you ask them today, most people, their knowledge of the escape and Alcatraz is based upon that 79 movie.
Yeah, well, it's like anything that people see that are based on true stories in movies or television shows. I mean, there's a kernel of truth, and then you have poetic license to kind of amp the story. But had they had all the information that you guys have, I mean, it's like it's a writer's dream, like a screenwriter's dream. That's why, like when we sit there, when I was reading it, I was like seeing it. I was seeing it chapter after chapter, and it's just the and what makes it more poignant is that you get to know everybody. You get to know their personalities, their quirks, their likes, their dislikes, what they like to do.
The characters come to life. They're not just these two mugshots. they're actual people with a family and,
Yeah.
loves of their lives and, dreams and things that they wanted and all these things and their aspirations. And you don't know that until you read this book. You don't know any of that.
The best compliment that I've received for the book, and I don't think anything's going to top this compliment in my mind, is that Ken shared with me that for Ken's mother, after she read the book, she said it was exactly what you said, Cindy, that it's like they came alive for me. That's who they were. That's how they talked. It's like you captured them. Somehow you captured them. And it was just like, wow, you just don't get any better than that for her, that she was given her stand. Like, we did a good job we honored, her brothers.
That's nice.
Yeah. And so it was just very nice to get that kind of a response to the story.
I think that's awesome. I mean, but going back to Fred Brizzi for a second, I mean, if you think about this, like, okay, so the brothers go out to California and they come back with all this money, right? And they're working with Fred Brizzi and they know he's doing this drug running stuff. And it's like, Mickey Cohen is now at Alcatraz when they're at Alcatraz. I mean, the connections. You can't even make this up. It's like unheard of. And the thing that will stick out for me forever is just Justice Warren signing that release. To me, it's like history. No one's ever done that before. So clearly they all were aware of what was going on. Clearly they were watching Fred Brizzi over the years. They were watching your family because they were waiting to see when your uncles were going to pop up and reach out to somebody, because there's no other reason to watch your family. For what reason?
They're still on the
they're
wanted
still on
list.
the hunt. There's still big news coming.
Yeah.
And that is just blows my mind with what Art says. If he truly does have evidence that no one else has been able to see, that they are dead, that they died in the bay, then my question to him is, why is the case still open then? If you've got proof that they drowned in that bay, then close the case.
Well, the thing, as we know, the government works on a geological clock, not a regular clock, and they move at a snail's pace. I mean, they've been talking about the Epstein files forever, and they still, so they want to make sure everything is locked, stock, and smoke and barrels, so they don't make any mistakes. But this to me is just like, it's like, why don't you just put an end to the fable? Because it's becoming like a tale. It's so big.
It's like mythology.
It is mythology.
It's like I said, it's the biggest true crime mystery of all time.
Yeah.
Besides, like, I don't even think there's anything else, actually.
Well, you have the JFK thing.
Well, JFK, but yeah.
Earhart, Jimmy Hoffa.
Well, I was thinking of Amelia Earhart, but
D.B. Cooper.
Was Amelia Earhart true crime, though? No, that's not true crime. No, she just disappeared. She could have been captured by aliens, for all we know. I mean, it's a mystery for sure. But true crime-wise, I mean, Alcatraz and JFK, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, D.B. Cooper's the other one.
D.B. Cooper, yeah.
Which is still,
people still wonder why.
People still not. I mean, you can't. There again, there's another story that you can't 100% say that what they think they know who the person is.
Exactly.
Right.
They have no 100% proof that is the person.
So when Uncle Man was meeting with Brizzi in the earlier 80s, do you know anything about those meetings?
Well, so the way that I found out about this was, I have a photo that I used to, and it's been around for a while, but it was a photo where Uncle Man had gone out with his daughter and her husband, and they had gone out to Yellowstone, and this was in '86. And it was right before my grandfather became very ill, and Uncle Man winds up moving back to Ruskin to take care of his dad up until the point that he died. So that photograph kind of stood out in my mind. And then when I was doing research on Fred Brizzi, I just happened to write, I was like, I wonder, I knew he was in prison in Florida, and I was like, I wonder if they would give me any information. So I wrote the prison. It might have been the prison I think it was the prison, not the parole board. Well, they send me his whole complete file. I mean, when he got arrested, all the way up until when he applied for parole, in the early part of 1986. So after he gets out on parole, he was still up under. He was on
probation,
and him and his wife, still married to Judy at that time, he wanted to take a trip across the country. So he had to write a letter, which it's in this file. He had to write a letter to his parole board and give a detailed description of where he was going. He said he was going, their ultimate goal was to go to Washington to the state fair. But this was September, and he was going to go by and spend a few days in Yellowstone. Well, Uncle Man was in Yellowstone in September, and Judy sent me pictures of him. She said he went off one time on his own, a couple of times walking around. They were there for a few days, but I've got a picture of him at the same geyser. It looks like the same time of day that picture with Uncle Man was there. So how is it a coincidence that he was at Yellowstone at the same time that Uncle Man was there?
No.
Well, my question is, did
there are no coincidences?
Did
ridiculous.
Uncle Man know of him when John and Clarence met him when they were teenagers? He had to.
I have a picture of Uncle Man driving a car. And I swear, I showed it to Mike. Fred Brizzi is a little small kid on the back of that car. You can look at the picture, and you can look at Fred Brizzi when he was a young kid. Mike, would you say that was the same person?
It's a strong resemblance. It's not the best picture. It's a little blurry. It's taken from a distance, but it does, and there's probably 7 or 8 people. They're probably mostly your uncles.
Mostly kids.
It's like this jalopy that they sort of cobbled together from parts. It's not a car, and they're all just kind of.
John and Clarence is in the car. Uncle Man is driving.
And you could make a case that it could be Fred Brizzi in the back of the car when he was.
Well, and even my mom said that they knew each other as kids.
Yeah. So there you go. There's that connection, that lifelong connection,
right?
And that bond, It's like,
and then me and Mike found a newspaper article where Fred Brizzi was sentenced to Mariana Boys Reform School, and just hours after that, John and Clarence and Alfred went before the same judge, Judge Hines, and in Tampa. And he sent both John and Clarence to the same reform school.
So they were there all at the same
reform school at the exact same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and those connections, that you make when you're a kid, they last forever.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, they're in a reform school together.
Well, you also have to remember too that in the 40s and early 50s, but mostly the 40s, Ruskin, there were only several hundred people living there at the time because it was a farm community.
Yeah.
So, you have acres and acres separating the families. You have, like in Ken's case, you have 15, 16 people living on the farm altogether. And the other farm families had a lot of kids too. Of course, you had to work to support the family. But they're all going to the same school. You have one school for this whole area. So everybody knew everybody because it was a very, very small community. It wasn't until years and years later that it really started to develop into kind of a tourist, kind of a upscale area, a nicer area. But for the longest time, it was nothing but farm. So everybody knew everybody.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
So,
Did you ever ask Art the connection that whether or not he knew the connection, the deep connection that Brizzi had with your uncles? Did you ever have that conversation with him?
Not really. Not to the point of how much, how close they were. Now,
because he doesn't. I mean, according to us, he doesn't believe Brizzi.
No, he says Art trust anything.
Yeah, I think Art is saying that. Art changed. I swear the video post that I put out when we did the 2015 show, Art was convinced that they made it at that time. He was convinced that Fred Brizzi was telling the truth. It wasn't until after Marshall Dykes started discounting the photograph that Art started changing his tune, questioning the photograph, not sure that's them. I keep going back and telling him, well, you're the one who hired the guy to analyze the photograph. Yeah. This guy, was teaching it at your academy. So, I mean, undoubtedly, you had a lot of respect for him to go meet him twice in Washington, D.C. I mean, this guy's, I went out and read some of his case files that he has done. I mean, he's solved many cold cases, found many missing people. He's not like this amateur that just popped up on the radar.
Yeah.
They decide to use. So Art would never really kind of throw him under the bus too much, because I believe he had respect for Michael.
Sure.
And
another thing too, we talked about this kind of way back, but Art was watching TV, or the TV was in the background, and I guess America's Most Wanted was on, and it was talking about John and Clarence being found, or that's what he thought it was, that they had found them, and he calls the show to talk about it. So his assumption, so why would he call unless he knew they were already alive? That he was, and then of course Art heard about that and then brought him in for questioning about where they are located, where are they, kind of a thing. So he knew before, because of that incident of a mistake, sort of mishearing what happened with the John and Clarence and the escape, and their surviving the escape, that he's calling in when he thought that they had been, oh no, they found them, they found them, and he's calling in about it. And so it sort of presupposes that he has that knowledge already.
Yeah.
That he already knew they were alive. And, obviously our contention is he knew where they were. He visited them, multiple times over the years. And then so much so that Art brings him in to question him about it. That's how serious Art took it.
Yeah.
Well,
do we know if that interview, is there a transcript of that interview anywhere? I'm sure there is.
I tried to find that show because I wanted to watch it.
No, I'm talking about the interview that Art had with Fred Brizzi when he pulled it.
Oh, the America's Most Wanted? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, America's Most Wanted. I tried to find the episode where
you can't find it?
I have not been able to find it, but not every episode is available to get out there. Now, one thing I will say is that they will tell you today, even Michael Dykes, when we showed him not only the photograph of the two men, but all of the other photographs, especially at the house. And he came back and said, yeah, this was taken in Brazil. So one, we know he went to Brazil. His wife verifies that he went to Brazil. The photographs have been verified that those were taken in Brazil, like the background, the electrical grids in front of the house. There were other things that I never thought of that Michael Dykes pointed out. He said, you can tell by the soil that is from Brazil. So there was no question he was in Brazil. And then you go, well, why would he take a picture of a house on a hill? Well, what relevance? If you're in Brazil and you're on vacation and you're taking pictures, you're not going to take a picture of just some random house on the hill.
And it's not like it was a really nice house. It was just kind of like a functional house.
Right. And why would you, and I've said this from the very beginning, why would you take a picture of two men that my mom and the England family would not know and give it to them?
It makes no sense.
That makes
doesn't make any sense.
So
you wouldn't. And they looked at the picture. When they looked at the picture of your mom and your aunt and everybody, what'd they say?
Well, I will say that when I first showed it to my mom after I discovered it, and before we ever had it analyzed, she saw her brothers. She told me, she said, yes, that's my brothers. That's John and that's Clarence. I can recognize them.
Of course, so, you know your family.
Yes. I mean, you would think, okay, the sister is going to be able to recognize her brothers. But then you know, like I said, I go back into how many people believed Fred Brizzi that was there during that 92 meeting. And the most important person that believed it was Uncle Man.
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, like I said, he never would have brought someone like that to meet his siblings.
Yeah.
A drug runner.
A story like that if he did not know that it was true.
Why do you think at that point that he wanted to, Uncle Man, bring Fred Brizzi there to kind of have this meeting and record it and to let them know? Was it just because everybody was getting up in age and that they just want to give Uncle Man just wanted to give them some sort of hope or solace, or just let them know?
I would say, probably a combination of both. I mean, Uncle Man, everybody at that point in 92, the whole family pretty much knew that Uncle Man knew where they were at and keeping in contact with him. There was always still, I think, this fear from the FBI, the U.S. Marshals. Hey, if we find out you know anything, you're going to prison.
Sure.
Johnny Clarence was still alive at that point. And so here it was for him to have someone other than himself tell the family the story. So he could pretty much, say, hey, well, I didn't tell the story. I didn't say I met him. I didn't say anything. This was Fred Brizzi. This was somebody else. So I think it was a way for him to share the story with his brothers and sisters without actually incriminating himself.
Right.
He could have gone to prison, if the FBI learned that he truly did know where they were at and he lied to them the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the two things I'd love to see is I'd love to see that the transcript of the interview of Art and Fred Brizzi after he pulled him off of, after the America's Most Wanted thing, and the report of the polygraph of Uncle Man.
Most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be kind of like, so Art, if you're listening, if you can just send those to me, my email. I
promise not to share anything.
I won't share it to anybody.
No one.
Yeah. So, because I think those, that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that you asked at the beginning was, what has this journey been meant to us, for a year that we've gone on all together? And a couple of things that I just want to add to that. And that is, because of your help, we've been able to continue to move the story forward. We're pursuing DNA options. We're pursuing, you've sent people down to Brazil to look for the families. Because without that, Ken and I couldn't do it. We just don't have those kinds of resources, and we wouldn't know where to look. We wouldn't know who to hire to do those things. And then the other part is, the interesting people we've met along the way. Ken mentioned, Stuart. We've also, I got to talk to Charles Herman on the phone, and Ken got to talk to Charlie Hopkins on the phone. One guard, one former inmate. You've had the other guy, I don't recall his name at the moment, the other ex-US Marshal.
Lenny DePaul.
Lenny.
And then all the others, Ken's cousins and the other people that we've met on the way. And plus, the people who follow the show. We get, messages from them. Oh, I love the show. Great episode. Keep going. We know you're going to find them. Very encouraging. Just the support that we're getting from the people who are a part of the story. That want them to be found just as much as we do. That it's sort of unexpected. I wasn't thinking about that part. For us, it was like we want to find John and Clarence and Frank Morris. That's our goal. But along the way, people have joined us in the journey. And,
oh yeah. I mean, why would? Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's very sticky. It's hard to get out of your brain. I mean, independent, just for all our listeners. I mean, the three of us or the four of us probably text each other every day. About something around Alcatraz. Something comes up, or Ken finds something, or
did you hear this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, lately Alcatraz has been in the press.
Did you see that? Oh, the Daily News. We forgot to talk about the Daily Mail.
Daily Mail, yeah, it's been in and around. I mean, your brother was in the Daily Mail the other day, talking about his version of his story of the book. But he definitely, according to what we were reading about, is that he definitely believes they made it out. And so it's it's a family affair here with it's like, so it's hard to shake this Alcatraz fever.
Yes.
Because it really is, and like we're just waiting on bated breath for some things to happen, and like on multiple fronts, and it's like, we have so many irons in the fire, and hopefully that, we can share that to everybody. And when we have that information, but we know it's there, we're just waiting. Now we just have to wait.
Well, I can't wait to get down to Brazil and check out a certain house. I'd love to go through this house that we suspect belonged to John, and no one's lived in it since he passed away. So there's no telling what's in that house. I mean, there's no telling other photos we will uncover in this house.
Exactly.
Fingerprints.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right. Well, happy 1 year, 52 weeks of My Uncle's Escaped Alcatraz. All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll have some different news.
Hopefully we'll have news next week.
Maybe.
We're still waiting.
All right.
All right. Bye.